The best attorney in Chattanooga, David Tulis, here at Nooga Radio. What about the question of fright? What is fright and anxiety? And is it something that should be permitted on the part of city officials here in Chattanooga? Should city officials be allowed to frighten people, especially women? That is happening today as we speak on the streets and highways and byways in the municipal corporation of Chattanooga. And that is by the use from Chief Fred Fletcher of unmarked police cars, which stop people on Highway 153 and other boulevards without proper markings. In other words, private cars chasing after private cars with lights flashing on the dashboard. And the victim, the arrestee, pulled over, and emerging from that car, a person dressed, usually a man, dressed as a police officer. Now, the question for that woman traveling by herself with her young child is, who is this person, and why is he not? Is it a real police officer? Why is he not in a police car? Am I in danger? Now, that's the question right there. Men would probably deal with such an encounter more resignedly and maybe more manfully, but fright is certainly something possible on the part of female travelers who are, of course, more vulnerable than men. Women are more vulnerable in physical confrontations than men. You know, men are designed for warfare. Men are designed by God for conquest, for masculine acts, for strength, for penetration, for muscles, for brutality, for killing, often as we're told by the state, in warfare. Women are not meant for warfare. They're not meant for struggle, for conflict, for combat, for wrestling, for boxing, for shooting. They're meant for the home. I mean, the woman is God made humankind. The woman is meant to bear the children, and that is a domestic perspective. That is a domestic calling. The husband is her head, right? And the woman is the heart. That is the way of reality. And it's that way around the world, even in cultures which are entirely lost in idolatry, in paganism, you have that structure. It's built into human nature and humankind. Man is the defender, and he is defending what the woman has built in her domestic authority, in her home. Women are not soldierly, and so they are much more likely to be frightened by being assailed, seized, and arrested, and stopped and questioned, and confronted by a person, usually a man, wearing a uniform that looks like a police uniform. Okay, he may be real, he may not be real. What happens if this encounter occurs at night? What about that? Now, we have from the police department spokesman an email which I think will be significant as we develop this story. And the advice there in the correspondence, which also indicated that he and Chief Fletcher refused to come to talk to you, my listener, about this problem and other problems. Okay, they're not willing to come on the program to talk with you. I don't know what they're afraid of, but they're refusing to do that. I guess the chief is just busy packing his bags. But the question that I raised it last week with the city attorney, Wade Hinton, and also in some detail with his deputy city attorney, Phil Nava. These are people who are in the higher of city government. They're attorneys, and they act in court on behalf of the corporation, which is to say Chattanooga. Now, the reason I want to say something about it now on account of weekend reporting. In here in the city, and I'm looking at probably the most helpful news website among the TV group would be TV3. It has a very useful interview and a lengthy, I think maybe a lengthy bit of film, if you will, taken from a smartphone of the chief of police commiserating with the mother of an 8-year-old boy who was hit by a stray bullet in a gang shootout. And the reason I said this came to my attention yesterday, I said, well, okay, do I have to write about this now, or can I just hold on to this? And I said, well, I really should write about it now, even though the story is not right. It's not really ripe for it. But this is David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga, which is to say a 180-foot tower pulsating vibrations in the air, forms of flight, which are our powerful AM signal here at 1240 AM, and also through the ground. And that tower, the 180-foot tower, is my pen, okay? And that's what I'm doing here. I'm inscribing on your consciousness, my listener, the story of Chattanooga and the story of the deep state here. We don't worry about the deep state in Washington so much as the one here in Tennessee. And the chief of police represents the deep state. Let's just say for fun, okay? Let's just let the right-wing talk show host go nuts talking with me about this. And caller, this is David Tulis, and you're on my show live. What's on your mind?
I want to admire that woman that's fighting this driver's license issue. Let's clarify this, okay? Because I've heard this over the years.
I can't quite hear you. Can you, excuse me, caller? I can't hear you.
And tearing up the roads, blah, blah, blah. That's all dicta. The reason why the state believes they have the authority to do this is under the Commerce Clause. And misread that, which regulating interstate commerce means to ensure the smooth flow of commerce. One state can't stop another. It's not to impose their will upon it. But that said, the reason they used to justify regulating corporations was that it's a creature of the state. So the corporation doesn't breathe on its own. Its life was created by Frankenstein himself. And Frankenstein created Frankenstein's monster, which is the corporation. That's its baby. The state's baby is the corporation. It can control it, and it can manipulate it, and it can subvert and pervert it because it created the corporation. The courts have said this, Hale versus Henkel. There's a clear distinction between an individual and a corporation. An individual may stand upon his constitutional rights. The corporation has privileges to it as granted by the state. So can one take their own conveyance or property from point A to point B unhindered without being harassed by the police under the law? Well, yes, of course. The problem is no one knows that. The judges, the lawyers, the appellate courts, the police all believe that you must be regulated in commerce, that you are actually the enemy when they pull you over. A license is defined as permission to do something that would otherwise be illegal. So they're saying if you take your property and you travel with your property, that unless the state gives you permission, you're doing something illegal. Now, there's another question that comes up, David. How will people know the rules of the road if they're not being regulated, if they're not being licensed? Well, that's pretty simple. You're not going to go jump out a window that's 30 feet high, nor will you travel with these other individuals without learning that STOP means stop. A red signal means stop. 55 means 55 miles an hour. So now this begs the question, if you do 75 and 55, have you damaged anyone? Well, no. Well, how can you be punished without a damage? By accepting the license. People have to get out of the mindset that government is there for your good. They're not. They are now using your license as a national identification card. They now punish you if you don't pay child support. I've never been in that position. That they take away your so-called privilege to drive. What does that have to do with child support? They're attaching everything to your driver's license because the system knows that if you don't have that document, you can't earn a living and you die. You wither up and die. It is a fascist, Marxist, socialist, communist idea. I don't know how we're ever going to get rid of it because of the stupidity of the American public. The absolute stupidity. This is not the fault of government. This is your neighbor's fault, David. This is the person sitting next to you. This is who we have to convince, is that you really think government has the right to regulate you?
You mean authority?
What's that?
You mean authority. Governments don't have rights. They have authority only. Authority and power. Go ahead.
They don't even have the authority, the means, the power, right, to do that. And the average person says, sure. Sure. But most people believe you should be compelled to buy insurance. That doesn't come from government. I bet you 9 out of 10 people believe that you, David Tulis, should be compelled to buy insurance to protect their sorry ass. If you want to protect yourself, you buy the insurance. You see, here's the difference between, we're going to call it an 18th century liberal or a libertarian and a so-called conservative or progressive liberal. Here's where they're the same. That the individual that believes in freedom doesn't want to compel you to do anything, ever. or prevent you from doing anything ever, unless you're harming another individual. The progressive, the conservative, and the liberal, Democrat, Republican know what's best for you, and they're going to compel you to do or not do something by legislation, by the arm of the state. And that's the difference. If you truly believe that you don't have the authority to compel anyone to do or not do something, fill out a form, get a license or whatever, then you truly are, let's call it a conservative, because you want to conserve the common law and the Constitution. And if you don't, you're a socialist, progressive communist.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Mike. That was a very stark and brief analysis of the problem, and that is to say the problem that we're trying to deal with here in the local economy. And my argument for this kind of liberty, I know, is the Minority Report. And our problem largely are, you could say, are conservatives and Republican conservatives who seem to be saying many of the right things, who want free markets and less government and so on. But they're really conservatives only to a point. Fundamentally, they do believe in the use of state power to affect goods that are not good things that are not, the avoidance of real wrongs, torts, and violations of God's law. These are people who want to use the power of the state, and many of them want to use the military to force good things on people in other countries. They may not be as aggressive as Democrats domestically, but they certainly want to have good things, democracy and the like, brought upon people by force, by bombs and drones and waves of military people in other countries. We don't know what's good. We really don't know what to long for and to want for. And that's one of the goals of my program here, the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio, is to make the listener long for something that's there. It's possible. We should live not in terms of what is, but in terms of what should be. Okay, that is how a Christian looks at things. A Christian looks at the world around him and is grieved at every turn. He's grieved and angry at rampant sin, rampant indifference to liberty, rampant indifference to God's law, widespread rejection of all the commandments, and the people's servants, the people's governors, if you will, doing the same thing as the people. So they have what they deserve. They don't deserve liberty, though in the law it's there to be seized and asserted, as Tracy Arnold has done. Now, I want to get back to this other question about the use of force. Local economy, if we're going to have local economy, has to come here, and will come here more fully over the decades, if we desire less the use of force. Now, the conservatives on the city council are a picture of this problem. They want to use force to ban people from having short-term vacation rentals through Airbnb and other internet platforms if they're not in a certain district. Well, as I've explained at Nooganomics.com, perhaps the most influential website in Chattanooga, because it's written for the people who matter. Okay, it's influential not because it's a mass platform. It's a particular platform for particular individual people who read that website. It's not popular. Okay, it's a website for people who matter, and it goes to the deep questions. And I'm David Tulis, and the editor of that website. So let me get to this other point about the use of force that I want to get to. I'm running out of time. There is in the law, the doctrine of fright, shock. Okay, fright and shock. That's a doctrine. I'm holding up here for my viewer on YouTube, American Jurisprudence. It's number 38, volume 38, that has a chapter about that. Now, it seems to me that we have the use of force by the police department exceedingly great in Chattanooga. And the mayor of Chattanooga, Andy Burke, has formed a committee of 6 people. Half of them are pro-state, pro-police, they're non-reform oriented people. And among them are a couple of former prosecutors, Bill Killian among them, Bill Cox, and then Christy Sell, the judge. So these are pro-state people generally. And the other 3 are a minister and a man at the CEO of Techtown, and a woman artist who apparently is kind of progressive. She's a progressive person, which means that she's not caring for the poor and the downtrodden and tends to favor the operation of the state. Olga Decline. I've not been able to get a hold of her for an interview, but I'm going by their categories and what I've heard about them. Okay, so these are the advisors, and they're going to be picking a chief of police. Our suggestion is that we reduce the threat of violence in Chattanooga and save American lives, because we have 55,400 hospitalizations a year based on 2012 data found unearthed by the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation study. 55,400 hospitalizations a year from police encounters, and about 1,000 killings by gun a year by cops. 1,000 killings per year. So 3 years of copdom kills as many people in this country as one morning of so-called terrorist activity over New York and the Pentagram. So this is what we're facing, and we have a kind of domestic terror, reign of terror, and the color is not red, and the color is not black. This is David Tulis, and I just want to mention the most salient points about my report today at Nooganomics.com. If you're busy and can't get to that website, you should have a subscription, by the way. Do subscribe to Nooganomics.com. And I posted the story today because I didn't want to lose a quote from the chief of police. He's talking about the woman who has a hospitalized 8-year-old son hit by a gang member bullet. And he says, "I can't even begin to imagine the fear and horror that mom experienced at that moment. My heart goes out to the family. I say to them, I am truly sorry you had to experience this horrific crime. As your chief of police and your neighbor, I cannot even express how angry I am that there are people in our community with such little disregard," as he misspoke there, "such little regard," he should say, "for life. Nothing pisses off cops like bad guys who harm children." Well, the point is, the highlighted material is fear and horror. Fear and shock are legal wrongs. Okay, it's a wrong to impose fear and shock. Now, the law books, such as AmJur, the American Jurisprudence Encyclopedia set, which I'm blessed with. By the way, if you're an attorney and have a copy of Corpus Juris Secundum or Corpus Juris, which is probably 180 volumes, I would love to take that off your hands. I'm dying to get a copy of some of that edition. I use these a lot, and for bathroom reading even. And I would love to have Corpus. So if you have Corpus Juris Secundum and can get your hands on that set for me, I would be so grateful to you, my listener. Again, it's called Corpus Juris Secundum. But there is a protected interest in not being given not having mental anguish or emotional distress or mental disturbance. These are all words that refer to what I'm highlighting here as the state of mind of women who are on the public highway, on Highway 153, and day or night, who are being stopped by Chattanooga police. They are stopping people in private cars, and they are putting them in a state of fright. I've kind of demanded information about this from city government. What authority is there for the chief of police to do this? What is the authority for the chief of police to do this, to harass women and give them fright? Now, this is something of a protected interest from Stacy Johnson, who's the executive director of La Paz here in Chattanooga. She has a great quote, and she says that group met recently with the police and educational people to make sure that everyone feels safe here in Chattanooga, she says. And I think we've really done a good job with our partners to help people feel safe. Now, feeling safe is important, and the chief of police in his discussion understands that. There's an important case about roadblocks that we've mentioned at least once, the Hicks case. And the reason the high court allows unconstitutional roadblocks is because it sees a compelling state interest. So it's going to allow something unconstitutional to continue, but to avoid what it calls the possibility of surprise, concern, or fright, that's a quote from the high court, imposes rules on the operation of roadblocks. And that's an important doctrine, that these roadblocks be minimally intrusive and avoid surprise, concern, or fright. That language is something that's being ignored by the use of private cars in traffic enforcement in Chattanooga. And it's a developing story. We've got more on that, and we are going to report to you. There's a vote today in the city council on Airbnb and a ban on Airbnb. Again, using force, bringing force to apply among people for a pretended public good. And it's simply wrong, and it will have to be challenged by some courageous homeowner or landlord who's going to say, you can't prevent me, and you cannot prevent my tenants from having Airbnb if they want to. You have no authority by which to impose this ban on my people. And we're talking here about the Chip Henderson Airbnb district, which excludes many parts of Chattanooga, and people in many parts of Chattanooga. There are more than 500 Airbnb type places for visitors from other countries and other cities to land here in Chattanooga, and the city is going to choke off, destroy the gig city, open market concept. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
iBuyChattanoogaHouses.com, Chattanooga's premier house buyer.